Hello and welcome to the 2020 Illinois Senate Forum. I'm Carol Marin. We are broadcasting from the NBC Tower, this time with no audience because of the coronavirus pandemic. Here are the candidates in the order they appear on the ballot. Dick Durbin, incumbent and Senate Democratic whip. Mark Curran, Republican candidate and former Lake County Sheriff. Willie Wilson, Chicago businessman and philanthropist who formed his own party. David Black, the Green Party candidate and a retired attorney. And Danny Malouf, Libertarian candidate and human resources manager. Is it the government's job to require people to wear masks?
No, I don't believe it is, especially at the federal level. I would absolutely oppose a federal mask mandate. What we do not need is one-size-fits-all solutions out of Washington, D.C. for all of the country, just as we don't need one-size-fits-all solutions out of Springfield for all of Illinois, because as we know, Chicago is quite different than Jacksonville, Illinois, just as Chicago is quite different than rural Tennessee. So I would oppose any federal mask mandates.
And do you accept that Roe v. Wade is settled law and should not be changed? Your position on this?
Sure. I'm not necessarily a fan of Roe v. Wade because of the federal overreach. I think we are a compact of 50 states, and as one of my opponents earlier mentioned, we do need to respect the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which says that those powers not enumerated to the federal government are reserved for the states and the people.
Tell us whether you believe that pre-existing conditions need to still be part of a national health plan. You raise your hand if that's a yes. So all of you. Mr. Malouf, you do not.
No, well, first off, I don't think we need a national health plan. I think that's why healthcare is so unaffordable and why the healthcare system is so broken in the first place. What we need to do is we need to get the federal government out of health insurance, just like we need to get the federal government out of higher education. If spending more money on healthcare solved the problem, we would have solved the healthcare crisis already. The problem is overregulation of the healthcare markets and the insurance markets, and that's why it's so unaffordable.
You want to abolish Obamacare, end Medicare, and let the free market take over. What do people do in the interim?
Well, if we reduce government regulations on healthcare, they purchase healthcare in a free market. What we need to ask ourselves is, again, what
if they're poor?
If they're poor, then I would expect the states and the charities and communities and churches to step up, because that's what we need to do. Is we need to localize decision making and spending as close to the individual as possible. We can't rely on one size fits all solutions out of Washington. Like even Mr. Black referred to, the government has failed us. When we talk about the government being the solution, what we need to understand is government is not the solution to our problems. The government is the problem. So when we ask, why is healthcare so expensive in the first place? Why is it so hard to obtain health insurance for some people? It's because of government regulation.
Federal bailout, yes or no?
No, I would oppose a federal bailout, just as I opposed the $2.3 trillion spending and bailout bill that was passed just a few months ago. The problem is we can't afford it. This country is $27 trillion in debt, and we need to ask ourselves, what about future generations of Americans? The problem with these bailouts and the stimulus, not only are they wasteful and fraudulent, and they bail out big banks and corporations, but we need to ask, how are we going to pay for it? We can only pay for it through additional taxation or borrowing that money and printing it through the Federal Reserve.
Thank you.
That's going to damage the poor and middle class as well as future generations.
Mr. Malouf, is a chokehold ever appropriate?
No, it's not, and we do need criminal justice reform. We need a fix, and what I can tell you is that the Republicans and Democrats have failed us in doing that. In Congress right now, both in the House and the Senate, we have bills that address criminal justice reform. The Unqualified Immunity Act, introduced by Justin Amash, Libertarian out of Michigan, and the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act out of Rand Paul in the Senate out of Kentucky. And what we've seen is neither Mitch McConnell nor Nancy Pelosi have called these bills to vote. And I would challenge my opponents at this moment in time to see who would also say yes, similar to me, to supporting those bills to end qualified immunity.
Okay, but
we also need to end the war on drugs.
We're on just one act,
Sure.
Mr. Malouf, right? Should disposable products like plastic cups and plates and utensils that contain less than 50% biodegradable material be banned?
No, I don't believe those types of products should be banned, especially at the federal level. It's not. I care about the environment. That's why I don't want the federal government involved in it. It takes individual responsibility, so I think people on their own could certainly choose to not use those specific products. I think that's a good step in the right direction.
Mr. Malouf, do you believe in term limits?
Yeah, I do. Historically, I was adverse to term limits because we have the opportunity to vote out people every 2 years for House and every 6 years for Senate. But you had asked what about institutional knowledge, and I think what good is institutional knowledge if they don't uphold their oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States? What we've seen with people like Dick Durbin, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and Lindsey Graham, for example, is they're not representing the American people anymore. They're representing special interests, lobbyists, big banks, and corporations. Dick Durbin has a long history, 38 years, of supporting bailouts for big banks and big corporations.
Can you give me 30 seconds, Mr. Malouf, on your level of optimism or pessimism?
Sure. I'm certainly optimistic about the future of our country. We have great people in this country, and there's no doubt about that. I am pessimistic about how the federal government continues to grow beyond the size and scope originally intended. And what I'm trying to get across in this campaign is to help people understand that nearly all of the problems we face today are a direct result of the federal government being way too big, putting special interests over the Constitution, engaging in endless war overseas, the bailouts and crony capitalism. We now have the most imprisoned country in the world and a $27 trillion national debt. These big government problems require libertarian solutions.